Tonight, Rishi tries to be cool with the kids.
I'm a coke addict, total coke addict.
Rishi tries to buy something. Rishi discovers what it's like to do things for yourself. It was meant to be sleek.
We won the war.
Effortless. Amazing. Job winning. But it hasn't.
The UK is better off in our growth numbers than France, Germany, Italy, USA, Canada, Japan.
Right.
Do you want me to continue?
We're going to show, just before we let you go, this graph, which actually stands in stark contrast to what you've just said, Vicky Ford. Economic growth since COVID-19. I will tell you the figures of G7 countries. United States there at the top, 4.2%. United Kingdom at the very bottom, behind Canada, Italy, France, Japan and Germany at minus 0.4%.
Some even suggested you wouldn't lose a single job. However, with UK car manufacturing, that's been anything but the case, with a slow decline starting in 2016, almost halving the actual production rates within the UK. Car production is one of the most important parts of the UK economy. It produces high-value goods, skilled jobs, and drives exports. 2016, it delivered an annual 82 billion to the Treasury. In 2016, it employed 168,000 people, and it was responsible in 2016 for 14.4% of the UK's exports. However, the true scale of its contribution is larger, around 175 billion, once the impact of all the surrounding sectors. So that's raw materials, that's R&D, logistics, retail, finance, insurance, tech, and more are taken into account. And the government knows this. Last year, I did a video on Nissan being bribed by the UK government and having to follow EU regulations despite being outside the EU, a Brexit bonus. But I also caught Rishi Sunak saying something very interesting about how they don't help companies.
The government's not best placed to decide which companies should and shouldn't be successful. What the government can do is support that. But ultimately, if those companies are going to be successful, they need to attract money from private investors as well. Thank you.
You were filmed earlier without a seatbelt on, Prime Minister, in your car. Would you address that for us?
However, Nissan are back in the news, and not for the right reasons. Nissan Sunderland have stated that high energy costs and a wrecked supply chain are making the country's largest car plant uncompetitive. Speaking at a formal unveiling of a reborn alliance between the Japanese company and its long-standing partner Renault, the French car maker, executives at Nissan said the Sunderland plant needed government support. And that's despite being bailed out, which you can check out in my previous video. Nissan executives confirmed that an electric replacement for the old micro model aimed at Nissan car buyers in Europe would be built at Renault's new electric manufacturing complex in northern France. In London, Nissan's global chief executive Makoto Uchida praised the Sunderland factory as a very important and a core plant, but added, "The UK is challenging and we need a supplier base." Mr. Gupta, the chief operating officer, said the future of Nissan Sunderland depended on three issues. Quote, making it more attractive as an investment with the help of government support, a reduction in the cost of manufacturing against a backdrop of rising energy costs that are making it more expensive than peer factories on the continent, and the localization of a supply chain to reduce the cost of shipping components. Asked whether Sunderland could regain its competitiveness as a car plant worth investing in, Gupta said, "That's a question that has to be answered." And asked how it could regain its competitiveness, he said, "The support of government, because we do not have a big automotive industry in the UK." He declined to comment on the type of support, other than to say the government needed to restore the UK's industrial base. He admitted that the amount of domestic UK supply chain input into the plant had fallen to historic lows. It's challenging to get 40%. Asked what would happen if Sunderland did not regain its competitiveness, he said, "Sunderland has to be competitive." In 2016, the Sunderland factory, which had employed 7,000 people, was producing more than 500,000 cars a year. That was more than halved, and last year, only 238,000 cars rolled off its assembly lines. Now, it's important to also take into account that there has been an overall decline across the globe and in Europe, and in part hampered by a microchip shortage. Now, we have to go on a little bit further because another problem is taking place in London. Ford has announced plans to cut 1,300 jobs in the UK over the next 2 years. That's 20% of its workforce. And remember that number, 20%. But it's part of 3,800 jobs being cut all over Europe, and a lot of people are blaming Brexit. Ford have claimed that the cuts are due to uncertain economic future and the transition to electric vehicles. Conservative MP John Barron, whose Basildon and Billericay constituency includes the Dunton site, called the news disappointing. Most of the UK cuts will be at its research site at Dunton in Essex, an area that predominantly voted for Brexit. Whilst I understand that Ford are looking to make these cuts via voluntary separation programs, and it will be worrying time for my constituents who are employed at the Dunton site. However, Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride said it was not just a UK phenomenon. And he's right. 2,300 jobs are being cut in Germany. More, you say? Well, not quite. There are hidden details. Germany may be losing more workers, but as a percentage, it's 11%. And as I reminded you earlier, in the UK it's 20%. The announcement comes less than 2 years after Ford closed its engine plant in Bridgend. But there's still more going on. By 2030, Ford expects all their cars to be fully electric. And there's the problem. Britain is going to be in competition with both the European Union and the United States, and the reason is they're trying to lure back manufacturing to the USA. It's with an act called the Inflation Reduction Act, a piece of US legislation which will be dangled in front of businesses worth a total of $370 billion in subsidies to set up greener production and supply chains in the US of A. The EU is now considering something that Brexiteers claimed could never happen. They are thinking of allowing national governments more freedom to subsidise their own industries, the kind of state aid the UK thought was constrained by EU membership. Government ministers insist the UK is a leader in green technology, but in the auto industry is widely seen to be falling behind both the EU and US in battery production, with only one plant in operation, and it's in administration. Overall, I can see why some of the Brexiteers are saying, well, you know, Germany's losing more. But if we look at what's happened since 2016, where we were on a huge building run, things have just gotten worse and worse for Brexit Britain. Once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to all of my supporters who keep this channel growing and going. Your help is so essential. And for everyone else out there, if you'd like to support, please look at the links in the description. You can do it through Patreon and YouTube, or simply buy me a coffee, and the more coffees you buy, the more I'm able to stay up and make videos like this. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.